Her Story, the World Zarathustra Chamber of Commerce Australia's podcast series where women from all walks of life, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their profession, regardless of their religion, come and tell us their stories. This episode of Her Story is on midwifery and on midwives. They are a cohort of health professionals whose services, their dedication, their commitment, and their passion doesn't get the recognition that the other health professionals get. Today, the 5th of May, we celebrate the International Day of the Midwife. According to, let me quote, according to the New South Wales Health website, the International Day of the Midwife is a chance for midwives to celebrate their profession and for all of us to recognize their work and contribution to maternal and newborn health. So hopefully through this podcast, we can raise the awareness of the profession and also of midwives. And we can also then ensure that we can get this profession the recognition that they deserve, the hard work that they put in, their passion and their dedication. Our guest today is young Natascha Dastur. She is the midwifery unit manager in a major Sydney hospital. So without further ado, let us welcome Natascha. Natascha, welcome to Her Story.
Thanks, Jimmy. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about yourself first. Just give us a bit of a background, and then we can start the conversation that we need to go into.
So I am Indian by birth. I'm Zarathustri by birth, really, but I'm born and bred in India, in Mumbai, and I travel the world a little bit in the hope of with study. And so I started by doing physiotherapy, and then I went into nursing because I felt it had a much more broader range of sort of medicinal power that I could sort of contribute to, because my goal is to always go and volunteer in all these different war-torn countries and countries in need. And after I did my nursing, I did my midwifery, because one of the things that the Red Cross and Medicine Sans Frontier recognizes is to have experience in acute care, but also to have experience in midwifery. And they really, really want midwives wherever you go to volunteer. So I took it upon myself to learn and study it when I came to Sydney, and I didn't realize how much it would change my life. It was just a stepping stone to doing something that I thought I wanted to do, but I didn't realize how much my life would change by doing it.
So what inspired you to take up midwifery as a career?
I think this was it. For me, it was, I never thought about it as someone who was like someone growing up in Bombay, especially in Mumbai. You don't really have like a broader scope of what nurses do in general, forget what midwives do, and there's no midwives in India in general. And when I came to Australia, I found this like broader range of practitioners that contribute to maternal and newborn health, and I just wanted to extend my knowledge in it and see if this was something that I wanted to do. But it never, as a child, like, how people say I always wanted to be something, I never wanted to be it. It never occurred to me. My goal was always either medicine or to do physiotherapy, and I just stumbled upon it. So the universe the profession attracted me to it rather than me being attracted to the profession.
So you are inspired to get into midwifery. When did it become this passion that you talk about? You said that you are very passionate about midwifery, about providing healthcare to mums and their babes. When did this become a passion?
I think when I started studying it, initially when you're studying something, your goal is you're studying the theory and then you're putting it into practice. And then when I started working as a midwife in hospital, I just realized the sanctity of womanhood that it's sort of comprised of, and the amount of rights that women had to fight for to have something really basic that is, like your birthrights. And the fact that this is something that women have been doing, and I think this sort of it draws similarity to being a Parsi, because we're such an older religion, but also to something that made me think, well, women have been doing this for so many years and years and years and years, and it's changed so much. And in both its diversity and its medical practice, it's becoming more obstetric as the years go on, and sort of looking at the history of it and the history of feminism and the history of how women really struggled to gain their rights and how it began with gaining their birthrights. I think that's what really attracted me to it and what I became more passionate about. Initially, it's beautiful, supporting a woman and getting her to just realize how much power she has just by birthing a baby. And when you see that dynamic energy in a birth room, it's something that goes beyond medicine and beyond your theory of what you learn, and it pushes you into like a whole other realm where there's so much power in that moment when a newborn is brought into the world. And hearing women say, now that I've done this, I feel like I can do anything, like that's my prize when women say that, when women in my care say that. And I think that's the gift that I take away. Not just that healthy mum and healthy baby is important, but also the fact that they say, now that I've done this, I've got everything I wished for, I've got everything I wanted for my birth experience. And it carries on, it takes you forward, it changes you as a human being, it makes you better in your own profession and your own life. And to see women's lives change just by birth is something that really, really took me by surprise.
Fantastic. What kind of skills, training, qualifications, and competencies does one need to be a midwife?
In Australia, there's two midwifery sort of pathways that you can take. One is a direct entry midwife. So you basically apply for a university, a Bachelor of Midwifery in university, and that's a 3-year or 3.5-year course, depending on what university it is. And then the other one is a graduate diploma in midwifery that they offer to registered nurses already. So that's a 1-year, really intensive course, which is a whole year that comprises of, and both of them comprise of like theory and lots of practical on the unit. So you are affiliated with a hospital and you're working for a period of time in the birthing unit, in the maternity postnatal unit, in the antenatal ward, in outpatient clinics, and then with community midwives visiting mums at home during their pregnancies and also after they've given birth.
Give us a sense of a normal day in the life of a midwife, the highs, the lows, because I'm sure, like you mentioned, the highs that you do get, the most rewarding part of your job, or your passion. But I'm sure that there must be lows, and there must be a little less rewarding aspect to your job.
I think because midwifery is so wide, there are so many. So what people essentially think, I think what the general cohort thinks is that you're stuck in the silo of the birthing unit, which is the most important part. I think that's everything in the care comes down to what you do in the birthing unit and how you birth and the nature of your birth. And but there's so many different aspects to it. And so for me, I'm more of a birthing unit midwife. So predominantly my practice has been in the birth unit. I've been an educator in the birth unit. And so it would be fair for me to just talk about like that silo of experience. And the highs are what, I talked about, is just watching women have these powerful normal births or births in general. And then I think there are a few lows, and we've seen a lot of that in recent times. The lows have been in terms of we're really lacking midwives now. We're losing a lot of midwives in Australia, and the COVID-19 pandemic has essentially changed the workforce of healthcare in ways that we could not predict. We thought we could predict it, but we could not predict. There's high levels of burnout. So in terms of staffing, that's one of the biggest lows, not being able to give women the kind of care that all of us do, and because of the amount of women that we look after at some periods of time. And so staffing is a big thing. And then you have, we have sad outcomes. It's not all fun and joy. Pregnancies do come with a certain set of complications, and women do end up losing babies. And even though that is sad, that's one of the big lows, but also the big highs in how can we now support this woman to continue her lifelong journey after this, because that changes her as well. And so, that's one of the lows that we have to combat, but we have to still try and work with, because it is a part of life. Medical malpractice and all that aside, like a lot of these things are a part of life. And so it's usually, if you're working in a major metropolitan hospital like I am, it's generally quite busy. There's a lot of women coming in, there's a lot of high risk women coming in, so we have to be sort of on the ball and up to date with knowledge and current evidence and practice.
So that was one of the questions I was going to ask you about, the effect of shutdowns, lockdowns, etc., due to COVID on midwifery, on the services that you midwives perform. And obviously that would have had some kind of a real this thing, not only on your staffing, but also on the numbers of people coming in and that sort of thing. So there has been quite a bit of an impact of COVID on your work.
Yeah, I mean, on one side, actually, COVID has brought couples together. So a lot of couples are making babies during COVID. They found that that's the right time now, because you're at home and you're working, and everyone's working from home, and that's the best time to have babies. So there's the term COVID babies, which I don't like, but people say, these are all COVID babies, because everyone's getting pregnant. Everyone wants to start a family, and they're like, well, we're at home now. This is the time to start a family. So we are seeing a bit of a surge in the number of women coming in, having babies. And that's just in terms of like us looking at it. But also I think it's sad because in hospitals, in birth especially, women need to be surrounded by family and loved ones and the voices that the babies have heard when they've been pregnant. And so what COVID's done is, restricted the number of visitors that have come in, put a lot of pressure on them. It sort of gives them high levels of anxiety because they don't have, either their mum with them or their grandma with them, who also brings so much knowledge and just support, really, I think is hard on the women. So that's hard for us because we need to make sure, and I always tell the midwives this, we need to make sure that we are everybody for them. We're their husbands, we're their sisters, we're their aunties, we're trying to be their grandmothers. That's been a little bit hard.
Interesting. According to the New South Wales Health website, more than 100,000 babies are born each year in Australia, give or take a few thousand. How many babies do you think you have delivered? And once you have delivered this baby, do you have a certain bond with the mum and the bub?
I don't essentially use the term delivery. So my biggest goal is trying to eliminate the word delivery and bring in the word birth. Okay. Because I always say, pizzas and Uber Eats and stuff are delivered and babies are just born, so I try to change that sort of dialogue, but of course it's in there. In terms of the bonding with the babies, there's always bonding with these new souls, they give us, it's just beautiful to watch. But watching the bonding of mum and baby is much, much more brings a much more positive sort of aspect to us, and we bond a lot with the mums. So you can imagine, you know, you're spending sort of 12 hours in a room, up to 12 hours in a room with a laboring mother who's undergone her highs and lows and the screams and the pain and the laughter and the joy and the tears. And so it brings you together in that moment, and there's always that bond. So, you know, all the midwives, you ask them, you know, do you remember that woman who birthed 3 years ago who said to you after the baby was born, you know, blah blah blah, and they'd be like, yes, I do remember her. So you don't remember the names, but there's always a connection with every mum and their partner every time they're in the birth room. Yeah.
You know, in modern times, husbands or partners are usually now allowed to be during that process, to be present along in that process. I was fortunate enough to be there for my wife when my son was born.
Yeah.
And I was, I think, more nervous than she was, women being stronger than men, of course. And but the joy that I felt when I first saw him emerge. So what is the role, how do you see the role of men today in this whole process? Because in the olden days, it was just, you know, the mother and the nurse or whoever in the country you were in, midwifery or whatever.
Yeah.
So now, how do you see men coming into the picture, being supportive, being present, and taking that pleasure of being there for their child?
Yeah, it's definitely one of the trickier, not harder, one of the trickier parts of our job, I think, is trying to get around the partners. And one of the reasons is because women go into a primal animal instinctive brain. Their thinking brain gets shut down in labor and their primal brain goes up. So your wife could have been the kindest, calmest, most subdued person in life in general, and then she gets into labor and she becomes this animalistic, completely different person, and you're like, what? This is not my wife. So we know that that's normal, but us trying to help the partners through it, that's very difficult. And you're right, it was all women's business, you know, all women, that was all what women used to do. And the partners would just say hi to the baby once the baby came out and the woman was cleaned up. And now we're like, no, you come and get down and dirty with her and you support her and you be there with her. And there's lots of classes and training that women and partners go to, mostly for the partners. If you talk to the women, they're like, I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for him or her, because, you know, they're the ones whose primal brain is not going to be turned on. And it's really wonderful to see. There's a lot of anxiety, of course, like, because it's just something that's completely out of their grasp and that they can't control. But it's really wonderful to see that there are more and more partners who are really engaging with their wives and their partners, and really trying to make an effort to come in and advocate for them when they, you know, they can't speak, they're too tired, or, you know, like asking them questions for us, but not making decisions for them, like being there with them when they make the decision. But it's really a big change. But you're right, it's that's one of the challenges of the job, is to help the birth partners through it too.
I'm relieved. In spite of TV series like the BBC's Call the Midwife and Channel 10's One Born Every Minute, I believe you and your unit featured in one of those episodes. So, but there's a lack of awareness and appreciation of midwifery. And what, in your opinion, what needs to be done to increase this awareness and get this the appreciation that you deserve?
Look, I think that there's different levels of appreciation. And, you know, when we're sort of, me being in my midwifery siloed world, I feel a lot of appreciation, to be honest. Like, I feel a lot of appreciation, a lot of gratitude. But like, you're right. I think when I go somewhere else, like to another country, for example, when I go back home to Bombay and I tell someone I'm a midwife, then I'm not really sure what you're saying. So it's things like this that sort of like these interviews, you know, talking more about the profession, like bringing light about the profession to people is really good. I think that benefits it, and you know, bringing forth what the true essence of the profession is. You just have to keep talking about it and just allowing people to recognize what we do, and you know, knowing that it's important work. We're working in a space where the future citizens of the world are coming in, and we need to be very, very careful of what environment they're coming into, not just what environment they're being raised in, because there's so many studies on the impacts of babies born in obstetric violence and in war-torn countries that then show sort of detrimental effects in terms of growth and development. And so if there's anything that we need to bring up in terms of awareness, is that, you know, make sure that you know, as a birthing woman, you're understanding of your rights, you know what you want, you seek a midwife, you talk about midwifery to all your other women friends, you know, you make sure that you're accessing the right kind of care for yourself. And we need to make sure that these babies are born in an environment that will sustain them for the future.
So basically, the World Zarathustra Chamber of Commerce Australia is doing its little bit to promote awareness, or to create awareness and increase awareness, and also to ensure that more people appreciate the kind of work that you dedicated professionals do. Just one question that I would like to ask you is, if you could go back in time to a younger Natasha, before you decided to take up midwifery as a career, would you still decide on this path? And or would you say, look, I think based on what I've now experienced, I might go into being a doctor or any other profession? Would you still go back, and if you then went back in this time machine that the World Zarathustra Chamber of Commerce Australia has designed for you, and you went back to that moment in time where a younger Natasha is suddenly deciding, oh, I think I'll become a midwife, would you still do it?
Without even 1 inch of a doubt in my head. You know, like I said, I never decided to do this. The universe decided it for me. So even if I did something completely different and I reached like the age that I reach now, I feel, or even 10 years from now or 10 years from then, I think that I would have been a midwife anyway. I don't think that in any realm of my life I would not have been a midwife. I don't think that that's just would not have been possible in any way. Whether I wanted to or not, it would have drawn me to it, I think.
Fantastic. That's fantastic. Because if somebody asked me, if somebody took me back, you know, in those wild days when dinosaurs ruled the earth, when I was young, younger, and asked me, would you want to be a chartered accountant? And I would have said, maybe not. I'd love to do journalism, or I'd like to do something else, because those are my skills. So I really appreciate the fact that you are still so passionate about what you do. And I think that has come through right through this chat that we've been having. So thank you so much, Natasha, for not only coming here today, but also for giving us a sense of this passion that you have for midwifery, but also the dedication and the support the dedication and the passion that you have. But I think what is more important is the fact that now people can realize that there is this whole cohort of health professionals who go unnoticed sometimes, that fly under the radar. So thank you so much for your time. And also your passion comes through completely. So really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. And it would be nice if there are, I don't know, and I don't think that there are any other Farsi midwives in Australia, but if there are, this would be a really good medium. It would be really nice to sort of network with them and get together and grow the profession and build build on it, really.
I'd love to facilitate that. That'll be really good.
Yeah.
Let's see what comes out of this chat.
Yeah.
And anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me. That's so kind of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you.